Hello, TandLers, and welcome to another episode of TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. As you know, in each episode, we focus on the people and practices that are helping us grow stronger together as a learning community. I'm Nancy, your host, and I'm joined in today's interview by my wonderful co-host, Gena. Today's conversation is all about transitions, from the classroom to instructional coaching, and then back again. We're talking about what it means to step into teacher leadership, the lessons you learn along the way, and how those experiences shape your practice when you return to the classroom. Our guest is the phenomenal Priscilla Milam, an accomplished secondary math teacher who served for 3 years as an instructional coach and now is back in the classroom at Puyallup High School. In this episode, Priscilla shares the motivations behind each transition, what she gained from her time as a coach, and the surprising challenges of returning to a role she thought she already knew. We'll talk about authenticity, vulnerability, curriculum, and what it means to lead with integrity and heart. Whether you're a teacher considering a leadership role, a coach returning to the classroom, or simply someone who values continuous growth, this conversation has something for you. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to TandL Talks. I'm your host, Nancy.
I'm Gena, your lovely co-host, and you'll have to take my word for it again.
Still lovely. And today we are talking about transitioning from a classroom teacher to a teacher leadership position, in this case an instructional coach, and then transitioning back to the classroom. And we have a fabulous educator who has done just that.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Milam, and I spent the past year at Puyallup High School teaching Algebra 1 and geometry.
And before that, you're an instructional coach.
Yeah, prior to that, I was an instructional coach for 3 years supporting secondary math. And then before that, I worked at Glacier View Junior High teaching primarily 9th grade algebra and geometry, but I also spent a year supporting Puyallup digital learning as a 0.2, so that was in addition to teaching at Glacier View.
So Priscilla, let's talk about when you first transitioned into being an instructional coach. What did you hope to gain from that work, and what did you hope to bring with you to the role of instructional coach?
Well, I had a little bit of a taste of what it was like working with the teaching and learning department prior to applying for that job. I had been part of the Cultivating Equitable Educators series for a few years, and I really appreciated the opportunity to highlight some instructional strategies that had worked for me, but also really learn from the people who came to the table. And I think one of the things that I missed by being in the same building for so long, and that was my first post as a teacher, and not really working in other systems, was I really had this strong desire to work with and learn from other educators. And DEE allowed me to have some of that. I met some great people that I was able to do some collaborating with, but I really wanted more of that. I really had a desire to keep learning about the job of being an educator. So that's what I hoped to gain. When Glacier View first opened, it was on a block schedule.
Right.
And we did some really strong teaming, but not with our department. So I was on a team with a social studies, a language arts, and a science teacher, and we all taught the same students, and we shared the same planning. So I worked with these great, incredible teachers who had been in the profession a long time and had so many instructional strategies and tools in their tool belt that they gladly shared with me, but they were strategies that I think maybe a typical math teacher might not have used because they taught other subjects. And so also being on a block schedule, you have to really keep the kids moving, and you have to be willing to transition a lot in a class period to keep kids engaged. And so I think that just sort of naturally forced me to try things that maybe I wouldn't have tried otherwise. And yeah, I felt like maybe I could offer that to other teachers as well.
So was there a moment or experience when you were an instructional coach that sort of shaped your thinking around leadership?
I think it's interesting that you use the word leadership, because I don't think when I stepped into the role of an instructional coach that I ever thought of myself as a leader, at least not in the beginning. I really did want to step into the role, as I said, both to improve my own practice, but also just to help others.
Right.
When I first got hired at Glacier View, it was in October, and I never had that new teacher experience of going through an orientation. I didn't have a mentor. And so I was just sort of grasping at the people around me for help.
Right.
And I appreciated what I saw being built, which was this system that was really meant to support new teachers and help them develop, not in the same way I did with trial and error, but let's look at what you're doing well, let's look at what you're bringing to the table, and let's help you develop that more and really lean into your strengths. So I guess I never thought of it as leadership. It wasn't until I had a couple of experiences with teachers who would ask, well, what do you do all day? Or that experience of you're having a conversation with a fellow educator and they're being really guarded. And you're like, where is this coming from? I knew you before I was in this role. I'm the same person I was before. And I think sometimes I was treated as if I were someone's boss. And that I was in an evaluative role, and that was never ever what the job. It's not what the job's meant to do.
Exactly.
And it certainly wasn't ever anything I had a desire to do. I have no desire to be an administrator. I really did just want to help other teachers while also learning and improving my own practice. And I think over time, people started to see that I was really advocating to other leaders in the district on behalf of teachers.
Yes.
But I think if I hadn't been sensitive to that in the beginning, I don't know that shift would have happened. It was constantly reassuring people, our conversations are, it's between you and me and these four walls. You can share whatever you need to share. What problem of practice do you want to work on? How can I help you? So building that trust with adults was harder, even though they're people that I had worked with for many years, was much harder than building those relationships with students. So I think that was probably the biggest difference in the two roles. And yeah, I'm sorry. I think I've lost track of your original question.
No, that's okay. We're just talking.
I love what you just said, because having served in that same role in a different capacity, it just, I think, highlights the idea of coaching and the amount of vulnerability it takes as an educator to sort of say, I am struggling with this, and maybe working with a different educator could help me brainstorm or build or grow in a way that I hadn't thought of before. But it's hard to get to a place where you can be vulnerable and sort of acknowledge, oh gosh, help.
Right.
And I agree with you, because I onboarded the same way you did, with no mentor. It was after all of the orientation, and it did feel a little bit like initiation by fire. And I think how much more impactful I could have been as a teacher if I hadn't had to make all those mistakes by myself and then rewind and try something different.
I think back on those first 3 years of teaching, and I almost wish I had the ability to just write, an apology letter to the students from the first 3 years. But I think math specifically is one of those subjects where my biggest job isn't teaching students the content, it's helping them learn how to learn the content and learn how to be comfortable with mistakes, learn how to be vulnerable. And so I value the time I spent as an instructional coach because it helped me learn to be more comfortable with being vulnerable, and also really highlighted like the need for relationship in order for real growth to happen. You have to have a foundation of trust. And if you don't have that, people aren't, whether they're students or adults, they're not going to be vulnerable. They're not going to be willing to make mistakes in front of you. And if you're not willing to make mistakes, it's going to take you that much longer to really learn the big lessons. So I never, in the beginning, I didn't think of myself as being in a leadership role, but I certainly recognize now, and I did, in the second half of my second year and third year in the role, I did recognize that I was a leader. And with that comes a lot of responsibility to really just be intentional and be vulnerable and be willing to give people time and space to grow. Taught me to be a better listener. I think I underestimated the importance of giving people space to think and process, because I've always sort of been like a planner and like a checklist person. I just want to like check things off this list. And I think the biggest thing you need to put on your list sometimes is just like time to think and process. So
yeah, because maybe coaching is a process, not a product.
Well, I think teaching
Mm-hmm.
it's really an art.
Yes,
I mean, there's no one size fits all, right? It's not. I think even as instructional coaches, we recognize that the strategies that we highlight, right? The reason that we highlight the specific strategies we highlight is because they are flexible. You can adapt them to, different grade levels and ages. And you can line 3 teachers up, and even if they teach the same grade level and the same content, if they're using that same instructional strategy, but they have a different flavor, right? Because it also has to work for your personality. Because you have to be authentic when you're in front of students. They know when you're faking it.
Right. They can suss that out right away.
So, and maybe that's what's missing a little bit, is just like permission for teachers to make a thing their own. Like it's not like a prescription, right? We're not writing you like a prescription to fix a thing. It's here's an opportunity, like make it your own, like make it fit you. And if it's not a need you have, then maybe it's not a strategy like you need. Like find something else that you could lean into, because it is an art and the kids are different. And so we also have to be willing to be different and be adaptive.
We worked with a coach a couple years ago who called that bringing your sparkle. So that's such an elementary thing.
Like any secondary teachers out there, like, yeah,
okay, sorry, secondary people, I know, and maybe sixth.
But that's part of the flavor, right?
Right, like, exactly. It's we're not saying abandon the curriculum. We're saying teach the curriculum, but that's also the difference between teaching with fidelity, which is that rote step by step, versus teaching with integrity.
Can I just tell you that the hardest thing for me this past year, like the thing it took me the longest to really wrap my head around as I stepped back into the classroom.
Yeah.
So we have a different math curriculum now than we had when I was teaching, because we adopted it my first year as an instructional coach. And I had lots of time to like dig into the curriculum and like worked with amazing math teachers who were willing to help like map and adapt it to the needs of our district. But I went back into the classroom and I'm like, okay, like I have to follow this thing, right? There's the map and there's a pacing guide, and I gotta like, do the things that are in the book, because that's what I've been told to do, and I'm a rule follower. And I got like 3 months in, and I'm like, this isn't working. Like, what is happening?
Right.
Like, I know how to do this job. I've done this job. Literally have done this job. And I finally just like, I don't know, this light bulb went on, and it was like, I had to coach myself. Like, what would I say to myself if I were my coach? And I would say, you know, curriculum is like a resource.
Right.
Instructional strategies are how we teach.
Right.
Stop treating this curriculum like it's an instructional strategy and do what you know works for kids. And it was like, it just freed me up to like do the job I knew to do.
Did you just tell me that you brought your sparkle? You learned how to bring your sparkle? I think that's what you just told me, Priscilla.
You could just see her face right now.
I think I would use the word flavor.
Okay.
Like, glitter is not my jam. It's
Look, I taught elementary and it was not my jam either.
my
Definitely
husband
my
would
jam.
say that glitter is the devil. It doesn't ever go. It just
Exactly.
sticks to everything.
9 years later, you're going to find a piece in your hair.
I don't understand why that's a problem for people.
Well, we have very different flavors.
But yeah, I think that's really where we're trying, the message that we're trying to send, right? Is we have to teach the curriculum, no doubt. And kids are going to be different in every single classroom. And teachers have different strengths and different gifts. And how do you package all of that up to do the best thing for kids? It is such a complex task.
But I think the biggest difference between curriculum at the primary level and curriculum, and I'm using quotes here, at the secondary level, is that curriculum at the elementary level does weave in so many strategies and, you know, philosophies of teaching.
Right.
If I were to hand you an Algebra 1 textbook, you would not see any of that in the, it's literally a resource. This is the content of what we're teaching.
Yeah.
And so if I were to give a message to anyone, whether they be an administrator or a teacher, that message would be like, do the things as they're laid out in the pacing guide, or advocate for a change with that.
Advocate for change, for sure.
But use the strategies that you know are going to engage your students the most.
Yes.
Like, you can teach what's in the book without putting like this example up and doing it in front of them and then having them regurgitate it. There are other ways to teach, much better ways to teach, like math. Kids have to explore, they have to know, they have to be given opportunities to have discussions that don't have just one answer.
Right.
It's the same way if I were to coach a teacher, right? If I walk in and I ask them a question that I already know the answer to, so that means there's a wrong answer.
Right.
They're going to be less willing to even engage in the question for fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
The same thing is true of my students.
Yes.
If I'm not asking them genuine questions, I'm not asking them to like compare and contrast or like talk about another way to do a thing. I don't give them those opportunities. They think it's a trap. Like, I'm asking them a question that only I know the answer to, you know. They're going to be less willing to engage and try. So I think that's probably what I've gained the most out of this job, is just like, there's so many different ways to try and do and be an educator. And for 3 years, I had the opportunity to explore that and collaborate with other teachers. And now I get to take what I learned and go back in the classroom and do it with like the people that we're all here to impact the most.
Right.
Which is the really rewarding part of the job for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, Priscilla, what led to your decision to return to the classroom? Was it a gradual decision? Was there
I feel like it wasn't a straight line.
Okay.
Like, I walked into the role of an instructional coach, and August came, and there's all that excitement, right, of working with the new teachers and helping them get like their feet off the, well, on the ground, off the ground. Anyway, bad analogy. Helping them get started. And then September came, and I saw like the teachers in their classroom with their kids, and there was like this like mourning period of like, I'm missing out on building these connections with like a whole new class of students. And I think that mourning period lasted a while for me. But then there was so many things that happened in the 3 years that I was in that instructional coach role. We changed how we structure directors, like at ESC, and there was like a whole year where there was like almost felt like a gap, where there wasn't really anyone over math
doing the work, right?
And so I'm glad I was there to fill that gap, but like it wasn't what I stepped into the role to do.
Right.
I'm glad I was able to do it. I'm glad that I was able to help create some continuity, but it wasn't the reason I took the role.
Yep.
And I was doing things that are like outside my scope and skill level, just sort of like in the dark, right? And then my third year came, because I agreed to do the job for 3 years when I took the role. So I'm like, I said I would, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And the third year came, and we hired a director who had this vision, and I really enjoyed working with her, and I kind of felt that sparkle of like, oh, this is what this job is supposed to be. Like, I'm getting it. I'm starting to get it now.
Right.
But at that same time, I sort of saw the writing on the wall of like what was happening like outside of our district at the state and federal level. And I got scared. Like, I'm going to be forced out of a role and back in the classroom, and I'm going to push somebody out of their job. And then people have been looking at me in this leadership role for the past 3 years, and I'm going to have an impossible time building like collaborative relationships with people that I'm in the same building with, because they're going to look at me and they're going to be like, well, she's the reason Sam got fired or, pushed out.
Yep.
I didn't want that experience, because if there was one thing that I had learned to highly value in my 3 years as an instructional coach, it was collaboration. I didn't want to lose that. And I missed having, it wasn't just the students, I missed having the connections of people that you like work right next to and right across the hall from. There were a lot of times where I was like in a space by myself, like editing curriculum maps or, making pacing guides or, answering emails. And a job that I thought was going to be highly collaborative and was, there were times when it was very isolating.
Right.
So when the opportunity to apply at Puyallup High School, which was 2 miles from my house, opened up, I thought, well, here's this great opportunity to teach in the community where I live, to build relationships with other adults who live and work near me, and do the thing I love, which is to help kids learn that they can learn and do and apply math. I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So then I went through the reverse experience, right? So now I'm going back to the classroom, and I'm super excited about that. But I'm also grieving the loss of the connections and the scope of, very wide scope of this job that I had had for 3 years. And although there wasn't as much autonomy in my job as I thought there would be, it was very like, okay, now you're working on this. Nope, you're shifting. Now you're working on this. Oh, nope, back on this. The one thing I did have more flexibility with was my schedule. And so that was hard, right? Because now, you got to be there before the kids, and you're staying after the kids, and, So I think I've learned that everyone in education is overworked. We all have more on our plates than we could possibly consume.
Right.
And so, we're all doing the best we can to prioritize and do the things that we know are going to have the most impact on students. And I think it's allowed me to, it's given me permission to do the same in my teaching role. Like, I've got to take care of myself.
Yep.
But so what are the decisions I can make that are going to be the most impactful for my students and things I have the capacity to do?
Right.
So I think it's just given me permission to not be perfect. Not that I ever was, but I'm more okay with it now. Like, just, it's going to be what it's going to be.
That piece that you mentioned about mourning, I remember having that for a very long time. It's a strange feeling when the bell rings on that first day of school and all the excitement is happening in the classrooms. And, any of us can be in a classroom, but it's not the same. It's the teacher starting to build that community and getting to know those kids. It's just so powerful. And
there's a little bit of fear though. After 3 years of not doing that, going back, I'm like, can I still do this?
Yeah.
Like, can I? Yes, and yes. And they're great. The kids are amazing, and it's the best part of this job.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. That's exciting. What are some of the differences now that you've taught junior high kids, you've taught grown-ups, and you've taught almost grown-ups in high school? What are some of the commonalities and some differences that you see among those groups of learners?
I think everybody wants to be seen and valued for what they bring to the table, and that's regardless of age. I think another commonality is that whether you are a student or an adult, you don't always know what works best for you.
Right.
Because we just don't, as adults, we don't always take the time to think about our own thinking and like why we make the decisions that we make. We're like just consumed with just like making the next decision. And kids are so consumed with like, everyone's looking at me. Yeah. Like at least junior high and high school, like everyone's looking at me. And so their decisions are so based on like fears about what other people will think that they sometimes don't feel free to be authentically themselves. So although it comes from a very different place, I think we all need time and the ability to reflect on why we do what we do, like what's motivating this thing that I'm doing, what do I want to get out of it? And I think those are important questions that as teachers we need to ask our students, but we also need to ask those things of ourselves, like what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What have I tried that has worked? What haven't I tried yet? What might I be willing to try? Like those are really important things. I think adults are a little more apt to reflect than students. And so that's how we're different.
Yeah.
I think that reflection is so important. And I remember back again to the first year of teaching, and I thought if I just did the same things that the more experienced teachers were doing in their classroom, that I would have the same magic. And what you quickly realize is that because that works for you does not mean it's going to work for me. But it does require that reflection. Is like, why doesn't this do the same thing
right.
in my classroom as across the hall? But you do have to find your own authentic way, and that's really asking those questions. Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And two, it's like sometimes you're just meeting different needs. Like your students can be very different. Like you can be using this same strategy and doing it well. I've had things that I've used one year and then I try to do the exact same thing the next year and it's not working. Why isn't it working?
Right.
And sometimes it's because of what the person down the hall is doing. I had a teacher that I worked with my first 5 years at Glacier View who was phenomenal at getting students to collaborate and have these deep, meaningful discussions with each other and reflecting on their own. And she just did an amazing job of that. And I was having these great, students were having great conversations in my classroom. We shared the same kids, having great conversations and like really, deeply discussing like different math concepts. And I never had trouble getting them to collaborate. Well, then that teacher left. And the next year I'm like, why can't these kids talk to each other? Why aren't they leaning in? Like, what is happening here? And thankfully I had stayed connected to this teacher. She was like, well, have you taught them how to talk to each other? She's like, I don't think you understand all the work that went into getting them to do. And I'm like, oh, I see.
The power of leaning on the work that all the teachers before you have done.
Exactly.
Yes. And the teachers they have that year, like, what are you doing? Like, how is...
Right.
I think, though I don't have math teachers around me at PHS, I've got 2 great CTE teachers on either side of me, and resource teachers across the hall from me, who share a lot of the same students that I have. And so when something pops up with a kid, and I've tried like 2 or 3 things and communicated with families and not having success, as I'm standing out in the hallway, I was like, hey, do you have so-and-so? Have you seen this? Like, what have you tried? And a lot of times they have like the solution to the problem of practice that I'm seeing. And I think we underestimate, I have in the past underestimated like the importance of not just collaborating with my Java-like peers,
Right.
but people who teach something completely different than I teach.
Right.
So, yeah, that was another thing that I learned through the process of being both at a school that really pushed that, but also being an instructional coach where we are looking at strategies that really are umbrella strategies that can work for any content area.
Right. What does success mean to you now, and how has your definition changed? That's an interesting question, I think.
Well, you wrote that question, so...
Sort of.
Sort of, okay.
Maybe ChatGPT.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. What does success mean to me? I think it's a really good question. I think broadly, it means that I can do this job, feel like I've helped kids move forward in their like mindset about math, and also I can still have a life that is rich and full outside of the classroom. I think I've gained I think this is both product of the COVID and what that did for us, but also my job as an instructional coach. I highly value time with my family, and I recognize that plays a very like important role in how I show up for my students. Leanne Mahaffey was one of the teachers at PHS, and I sort of like adopted her as my unofficial mentor at PHS. I don't know if she knows that, so if she hears this, she'll know that. But,
Good job, Leanne.
Yeah. There's always points in your job where you're like, oh, am I doing this right? Like, she, one day after a little collaboration session we had, she wrote me an affirmation. This job is hard, and you're doing it well. Like, just stick that on your monitor and like read it every day, because this job is hard.
Right.
But she gave me some advice once. She said, when you decide to make a change and you put a system in place, you should put a system in place that is going to help the kids do X, Y, or Z. But you should also put a system in place that is going to help you. Like, so you have to have both. It has to be something that's going to move the kids forward, but it's also going to be something that, is easy for you to implement, or it's going to allow you to collect some data, or, do 2 things at once, do something that's going to take something off your plate.
Right.
And that was such great advice.
That is good advice.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I think of all the times, I still do this really, but as a teacher where I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to put this great system in place and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then it's not manageable. And
Can't
so,
sustain it. It's just too much work.
So I've exhausted myself and it didn't have an impact on kids. That was a dumb thing to do. So
Yeah. Yep.
I
So
should have had Leanne be my mentor.
I think we all need somebody to
Yes.
collaborate with. And I think that when I went back to the classroom, I decided that I could still impact like other teachers
Right.
by working alongside of them.
Yes.
Which I see them more now.
Yep.
Like it's the same people every day. And just as much as I'm going to impact them, they're going to impact me. And we all need somebody to talk to bounce ideas off of. We need a reflection partner, whether that's an instructional coach or the person that's across the hall from you. But I think last year was a success for me because I made a point of finding those people in my space that I could lean on, that I could be vulnerable with, that I could ask those questions to. And I feel like the vast majority of my students, would say that they were successful and that they learned to be more critical thinkers. So as long as I can still have that, I think.
And I 100% know that's true because no matter what you do it with your whole heart.
Yes,
and
you do.
your kids are so lucky to have you.
Thanks.
So, Priscilla, if there's a TandLer out there listening to this podcast who maybe is interested in doing some sort of teacher leadership, but maybe they're not sure if they're ready or they don't feel confident, what advice would you have for them?
I would say a coach is a great place to start. Like, what are the opportunities that are out there? Dating equitable educators is a great place to start. It's where I started my professional learning journey, and it's great because you're going to look at designing like one session, but you're there to help facilitate all the rest. So you get to sit in on the session and learn from all the great minds that come to the table. Or if there's, a book out there that you're like interested in learning about, like contact the professional learning department and see if you can like put a book study together. I've done one of those before while I was in the classroom. I would just say if there's something that you're interested in learning more about, just like you would in the classroom, like leverage that in more than one way. Like see if there are other people who will come to the table with you and learn together, because we learn the most when we do it in collaboration with others. I would say lean in and also remember your capacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Priscilla, thank you so much for being a guest today on TandL Talks. It has been a joy to just see your face because I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thanks.
But I also learn from you every day. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Priscilla.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of TandL Talks. Gena and I are so grateful to Priscilla for her honesty, her wisdom, and her humor, and for sharing the real story behind what it looks like to move between teaching and leadership and back again. One of the things I love most about this conversation is how it reminds us that growth isn't linear. Leadership comes in lots of different forms, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is take what we've learned and bring it back to the heart of the work, the classroom. So some key takeaways for me, coaching is relational. It's not about having all the answers. It's about listening, partnering, and building trust. Returning to the classroom is not going backwards. It's a chance to apply your leadership learning where it matters most, the classroom. Everyone needs reflection and connection. Whether you're teaching adults or children, relationships are the foundation for growth. Instructional integrity matters. It's not about following a script. It's about teaching with intention, curiosity, and your own unique flavor. Or, if you're like me, you could even call it sparkle. If you're an educator considering a new path, feeling the pull back to the classroom, or just wondering what your next step might be, take this as your encouragement. There's no one right direction. There's just the path that helps you keep growing, learning, and making a difference. Thanks again for listening to TandL Talks. I'm Nancy, and I will see you next time.